The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business.
They're not elite, they're a cult. They're a global cult. You have people whose one single most important defining objective is to eliminate and eradicate God. And that is the only consideration for them. Outside of that doesn't exist.
The world is a business.
Devil's Workshop number 22, Narrative, NPCs, and Reality. Picking up from where we left off in Devil's Workshop number 21, where we are exploring the possibility that we are potentially not on Earth Prime, a planet orbiting the Sun in a solar system, some questions to ask are what's going on, what to do about it, and what part really matters. So what's going on? Sorry, I don't have a clue, but NASA seems to be holding the line, at least if this person's account is real. You can read this interaction. It's not all that interesting, but they're basically continuing with the concept that light bends based on the air density. So what to do about it? Nothing new from me. Build a new decentralized societal model with mutual voluntary cooperation at its core, such that future generations don't have to have their big picture dreams truncated by some business interests. But that hasn't changed. So if reality is flat-ish and we aren't on Earth Prime, why bother? What part really matters? And the answer is that recognizing a lie can help us grow collectively such that we are less prone to that type of parasitic force. You can kill a parasite, but better yet, you can grow to be immune to it. One such parasitic force in history is usury, basically getting large numbers of people to be in debt and then doing their bidding. This was something that Thomas Jefferson warned us against. And as a response, Andrew Torba from Gab had a controversial idea: let's ban usury. Well, the banks certainly wouldn't like that, but we don't really need to live under the protection of some new authority that has the ability to keep central bankers regulated. Instead, we should create an environment where it's just common knowledge of how to live such that we wouldn't even consider putting future generations in debt to a business interest that's likely run by one of Epstein's clients. Given that we don't really know, and we most likely can't know what's going on in the business world at the moment, I use the black box approach when attempting to make sense of things that are unknown. It kind of came from my software days when we get libraries from companies and we didn't see the source code, so you just kind of have to poke and prod and see what behaviors result. So in a calculator, 2 plus 2, you generally know you're going to get the answer 4 in a certain period of time. You don't know what it's doing inside. Maybe it's counting sheep, maybe it's counting electrons, but it doesn't really matter. The black box approach, when applied to the business world, that is inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business, essentially means that, can't stop, don't even bother, it's been this way forever. And part of what is understood that you're not going to stop with the business world is the reasons to devalue life. And people who aren't sociopathic enough are kept at the lower levels of this game. And you'll know that you are one of them if you are paying rent, paying mortgage, or worrying about your financial future in any way. People in the business world are generally motivated the same way anyone else is, either by a carrot or a stick, it is money or blackmail in their case. And when you look at the sum result of business, like the way it expresses itself to us is through its narrative. And included in that default narrative is a selection of religions, non-religions, and other ideologies to follow and explore. So all history is written by, or at least acceptable to, the victor, which is some business interest. And if you give the business world a couple hundred years, especially without the internet, they pretty much can make up or hide anything. The narrative they put out is often honest, but definitely is missing a bigger picture. So you could say the FBI said we found the 9/11 hijacker's passport. Well, they probably did find that passport, but one of their friends also planted it, and they probably knew about it. So not giving you that information is obviously misleading. So absent transparency and trust, Some patterns for consuming this untrustworthy information is the default narrative, say whatever they believe, fine, I'll go with it, not that bad. So you generally know that they're lying, but you may or may not know the extent and don't necessarily have the personal actions to respond that it is bad. And then there's worse than bad, likely that you have responded and changed your life. So one example would be the default narrative is our democracy works and this is how humanity is meant to be. A not that bad narrative would say, well, the system is rigged, but that's all we have, and we can overwhelm the system by, trying to vote them out with 3 times the number of people. And a worse than bad is like, hey, we're being managed, I'm not even going to bother with that system anymore. The default narrative generally you could say is like public radio, network news, like CNN, NBC, Fox. And it's not so much that what's said, but how the vibe matches the audience. And the vibe is meant to poke the 2 rats shocked in a cage type of response. There's always a them, drama, new problems, and worse solutions. Like all of the narratives would have, war is a racket, but still somehow moving forward, you still support the war mechanism. So the vibe of public radio, generally targeting lefties, is one of, we are calm because we're smarter than conservatives. And that sells well to, let's say, decent people who are angry at the way things are, and they're trying to stand up for the little guy. And because of their experience and understanding of the world, they think that Republicans or conservatives are the biggest problem. And public radio has the vibe that matches that audience. Now, conservatives' demeanor tends to be a little more problem-solving and relaxed. I know that's probably strange for lefties to hear. It was for me when I first noticed it. But conservatives generally would say, we're going to vote, and if that fails, we have guns in each other and we're powered by God, oversimplification. So if you want to engage that audience, you're going to have to be a little more direct and aggressive in the messaging. So just think about the vibe that Hannity puts off and the intensity that he puts off compared to like public radio. And in both cases, the vibe is more important than what is said. And it leaves the audience with a feeling that, they're on the right side and they're fighting the good fight. Basically, they make the audience feel like they are better than someone else and are not part of the problem. Now, the default narrative, at least from my perspective, is flat out misleading, like the FBI and the passport. And there could be a lot of good info in the not that bad category, but it's not going to lead you to a path towards freedom because it is acceptable to the business interests. So the system doesn't care if you expose it. It only cares that it can keep enough of the human farm in line such that the population doesn't outgrow its dependence on the system itself. In the not that bad category are true believers. They generally believe what they say and their actions match. So this is less of a critique, but more to highlight the difference there could be in a non-commoditized narrative versus what we have today. And say what you want, at least their actions and words match. Well, first example, being on the left, Jimmy Dore. So for the left, the general solution is that they believe if they educate enough people that they would be in the streets demanding change because the world is that bad. And Jimmy's actions matched because there was something called Force the Vote, where they were asking very little, but it was essentially progressives wanted Medicare for all, and they wanted the Democrats to vote on it. The Democrats wouldn't even vote on it. It wasn't even going to pass. They just wanted, it was almost like a roll call, and the Democrats had a massive pushback, including a lot of content producers and, let's say, news people. But because his words and actions and the vibe matched, as a consumer of content, you can trust that when things get worse, Jimmy Dore's actions will likely match. And the vibe is okay with the them, because the vibe here is almost always angry at others for not waking up, as opposed to recognizing a lot of the lies and building something new. But Jimmy might not have a show. Not only would YouTube not promote someone trying to live independently of the system, but does their audience even want to hear that they are their own problem and solution? Like, people are very angry at another side for the way things are. And there's a lot of reason to be angry, but I don't know that it serves you. So this not that bad narrative, even if true, ends up being perfectly fine for the system. Well, similarly, in that category, a true believer and not that bad category would be Tim Pool. I'll say he's conservatish. He may not agree with that assessment. Mostly he's just a normal person reading the news and having a conversation about it. Normal, not a pejorative. He knows things are somewhat unstable, but not so bad that he's dropping his pursuit of business. So knowing things are unstable, yes, he has a garden and chickens and business ideas that are more community-minded as opposed to money-minded, so that's good. But from a conspiracy person's perspective, he must be pissing off people in charge because he's been swatted 10 plus times. But he doesn't like conspiracies being a regular news show.
If there's some dude on YouTube with like 1,000 subs and he's like, I think the world is flat, and you're like, oh no, our ideas can't defeat this person, then you've got bad ideas.
Yeah.
And you've got bad spokespeople. And you need to focus on how you can easily debunk things like flat earth. Yo, it's crazy that people think the earth is flat. It's
I know. It's like indication of social decay for sure.
Yeah.
It's like a psyop within a psyop.
It might be a psyop within a psyop. But if you want to run a legit news business and have stability, and you're going to have a support staff and people's finances are going to depend on your stability, it is generally assumed that you have to stick somewhat close to the default narrative. And if you push too far, you'll get swatted. If you push even further in the right or the wrong direction, depending on how you look at it, they will turn off your access to money or internet. Tim makes his decisions based on downstream ramifications as opposed to just the data right in front. So he doesn't believe that Trump won the 2020 election, not because the data doesn't suggest that, but because of the societal implications of a state claiming to have real elections, a state like the United States, while at the same time rigging them. And perhaps they've done it for decades. This is huge and would impact Tim's business and his image. And not just for him, but all those that he employs and depend on him. So similar is flat earth. That would destroy way too many assumptions in our societal model and would also impact his business. So if there's a relevant societal lie so big it's ridiculous, Tim Pool would face pressure not to consider it. So in both of these cases, the Upton Sinclair quote applies. It's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. So many still consider business a viable option, but if your solution is more honest business with each other, this is okay enough for the immutable bylaws of business. You know, they would say, oh, look, Tim Pool and crew are still focused on making money. Great. They'll eventually need court, lawyers, laws, etc. We have our in.
For the first time as a human, it finally hits you. You've been had, you've been lied to, and the whole world is far, far different than anything you ever thought it was. And now there is, in point of fact, a feeling of freedom comes out all over you. You begin to really feel it. Know the truth, and it will set you free.
So this Maxwell clip was about recognizing how you're being manipulated, and recognizing how you might be manipulated would set you free. So the truthers, and there's almost seems like there's a truther industry out there now, have taken that as a mantra, and they're like, the truth will set you free, so therefore you got to keep searching. And one such truther is David Icke.
You know, I hear all the time people say, what's the solution? The world's awash with solutions that lead to more problems that demand more solutions. The sensible thing surely is to remove the cause of the problem, and then the problem must go away because its cause is gone. This is the cause of the problem. Human perception has conceded itself to a programmed sense of reality. This is the cause. This is removing the cause. Expanding our minds beyond the program postage stamp consensus. We're imprisoned by walls because we believe in walls.
Now, that all seems to be true, but And awareness is really good, but endlessly searching for whose Epstein's clients are is a distraction if one's path forward is to become self-sufficient and independent. We don't need to know how guilty they are. We already know they're guilty. But truthers will just have you endlessly not acting and only searching. Also, in the I know the problem, follow my advice camp is Max Egan.
If we actually started to love and respect each other, we change the world in a day. I've said that for 15 years on air. It's really that simple. And the solution is so simple. Simply change your moral compass. If everybody on earth changed their moral compass, we'd change the world in a day. And everyone's asking what the solution is. They don't realise they are the solution. Changing your perspective is the solution. Oh, Max, you never provide any solutions. But yeah, I've been kind of prepping for this for years, folks. I mean, I've planted a few vegetables out in the forest. And simple non-compliance folks realise that you don't have rulers. You have employees. And they're stealing the silverware. It's time to turf them out. Even if you can't wake up the sleeping masses around you, you can still lead by example in your own life. I still have never shopped with any digital currency. I've never gone into a store with a cell phone. I've never used a credit card. It doesn't matter how informed you are. If you're using the tools that they give you to enslave you, then you're part of the problem. There's been a few donations to my Stripe account. That's really good. You'd say money's real. What are you asking for donations for? Well, at the moment, we need money because we have to pay to be alive, and everybody does. That's the thing. How are we going to get out of that situation? Well, I think the only way is for this entire society to implode.
Remember, the vibe needs to match. So if Max's audience are truthers who feel like they have it all together and they're on the right path, he'll walk around relaxed and act like he knows what all the problems are. Pretends to have it all together. But you notice that you push vague, what I would say, non-solutions. Like some people already have great moral compasses and are already loving enough. That doesn't seem to be the problem. In addition to the fact that everyone's not going to just. So, and it may seem like I'm being a little picky, but because certainly he's released a lot of good information. But at the same time, when you look at the overall message being put out, he does seem to be stoking anger.
If any politicians, media, police, doctors, anybody, they come into your store, they want to buy lunch, refuse to sell them food, refuse to rent them houses, refuse to rent them cars. Don't work for these people. Don't serve these people in any way, any shape or any form. Tell them to f*** off and go spend their money somewhere else. You don't support organised crime. You don't support corruption. You don't support slavery. So therefore, you don't support the politicians, you don't support the police, you don't support the media, you don't support any doctors that have been administering this jab to people. Whenever you see them, abuse them, laugh at them. Please take very good care. Until then, in Lakesh.
So rioting and protesting are just fine responses from the perspective of a transnational security state. That's why it's in the not that bad category. In fact, they probably welcome the excuse to use force. So it's good to ask when you hear their solutions, like, then what? Be more loving, then what? Or broaden your perspective, then what? You can kind of get a good feel for who's actually not advocating for realistic solutions. And if the situation is serious enough, you don't put the economy in the middle of what you are communicating to everyone else, especially if that economy is rigged and failing. So, and it's not the urgency of the message, but the pure communication of an idea outside of any financial pressure. It's almost like, wow, they set aside their money considerations to tell me something. So that would be in the worse than bad camp, and that's the camp that I'm in. I think their corruption is so bad that I generally don't really ask, is it true? I ask, would they be willing? And the answer is almost always yes. And if they lie about the nature of reality to their benefit, then it's likely something that's so massive going on that they'll never tell you. By the way, if you want to apply the and then critique to my solution. It's generally, what do you do? Be a prepper, then be self-sufficient. That's with all the, it's generally like being a prepper, but you don't need to buy water from the store. You don't need energy anywhere else. You have all that stuff based on the land, and you don't need to go to work to pay for the land. So this is very difficult, especially in our rigged economy.
Got you by the balls.
And then after that, to be a producer. That way you could use all those things, the self-sufficiency of actually producing something to give away. You could sell it, I guess, if you wanted, but at that point, you might as well not. So a network of self-sufficient producers can provide abundance and change the game. So that's the end then for me. One could gauge previous generations' narrative and zeitgeist from, say, newspapers, radio, and TV, and with the internet today, the conversation happening online becomes a similar gauge. So this public conversation is also presented and is the assumed set of options for the next generation. It's almost like they're saying, this is what the adults are thinking and dreaming of. And in a sense, the public conversation is kind of like a battleground of ideas that allows us and future generations to determine our individual and collective paths forward. One barometer of the authenticity of the narrative is how much communication is done without financial interests. In other words, if all the content producers that you watch suddenly do non-shows, like in the urgency from the show Don't Look Up, then you would know that there is something important that they're trying to tell you. But we're so money hypnotized that influencers generally aren't even looking for stories that wouldn't quote unquote sell. They're not looking to produce content for the public conversation outside of any financial or external interest, in addition to being incentivized to not look. So if all the content producers you watch suddenly do non-shows and speak more directly, you know the message they're producing is more authentic. Not producing content for a show, but they're trying to push an idea into our collective consciousness because the person believes that the idea might benefit others. Our default narrative is that we're on a round planet, even though we perceive reality as flat. NASA acknowledged that. And one easy, all-encompassing possibility for that flatness, though not so much the lying, is that we're in a biological simulation. The general freak out and rejection over a flat Earth seems to be more of a freak out than other conspiracies, because a flat reality breaks a lot of assumptions. You wouldn't normally ponder if other people are NPCs, at least I wouldn't. But with the flat reality and the weird behavior around it, it seems worth considering. Especially since any simulation likely has agents in the system to help manage it, kind of like the Matrix. And by exploring different, seemingly unlikely but possible scenarios, like a biological simulation with NPCs, we can solidify reasons for how to be and interact with others, as well as have a long-term life strategy. NPCs become relevant to the overall story because we might be, humanity revision number X of biological simulation Y, as opposed to humanity prime in its heyday on planet Earth, or some other story. So, NPCs. There's an unhealthy and shallow assumption, especially in the conspiracy community, that if someone doesn't see something a certain way or they haven't woken up, that they're dumb or they're an NPC or something like that. It's generally not helpful. So exploring different types of NPCs, they could be a person's body with an alien inside them or an alien controlling them. Basically, they have another agenda. It could just be a person's body following some default path and default set of rules, whether it's a robot or no soul or anything, just default behavior responses. Don't know. Or maybe they're just on a different path and they're just like you, but they see the world completely different. And both of you would come across as NPCs to the other. Or maybe their soul's experiencing a different timeline and you're interacting with just a version of them, a default version of them, and their soul's not there because their soul's somewhere else. So pretend you were at the home of a potentially new romantic interest and you had this experience. Because the situation is worse than bad, as the entire premise of him being there seems to be a lie. It's worth asking, what else is going on? It's like noticing the apartment was fake and there's more going on. It's the same as living with a large percentage of NPCs in a biological simulation. It's quite a bit different than being humanity on Earth Prime. So the situation becomes worse than bad because the entire premise of why he was there seems to be a lie. Now, much like the Potemkin village or the dead internet theory, the idea is that a bunch of effort was put there in making a facade. So what was it for? So it's like noticing the apartment was fake and there's more going on. Living with a large percentage of NPCs in a biological simulation is quite a bit different than being a human being on Earth Prime. So what put that simulation there, and what was the reason? So the flat Earth and biological simulation rabbit hole leads to having pretty much everything questioned. And it can be helpful to know why and what's going on, but not necessarily. And especially if they're hiding something on purpose. They're not going to tell you. Are we billions of people on planet Earth during the heyday, or are we just experiencing it, or some of us just experiencing it with a dead internet theory or Potemkin village facades? With knowing nothing but our own experiences in the simulation, we ask, what is their game? Who or what is running the matrix? And enough effort is put into the reality and the lies that it's unlikely just to be a game or something small. It could be a human farm testing for like a spiritual test, or it could be, I'm about to ruin like the TV shows Colony and Westworld and movies Prometheus and Dark City. So if you want to see those and you haven't seen them, hit mute. So in the TV show Colony, a bunch of aliens went and basically had the government act like they're doing today and hide the fact that they were depopulating us while enslaving us, except the aliens were in charge. And eventually they were going to have us recruited to be an alien army and fight some other aliens. There's the movie Prometheus, where they have these engineer people. We're repopulating a planet with DNA, seemed like human DNA, because life had been lost. Similarly, life had been lost. This is Dark City. There was a bunch of beings. It's hard to see. They were managing this, I guess it was like a city floating in space. It would be like a mini flat Earth. And what they would do is they would blank people's memory and put them in different dramatic situations and try and see what makes life. So again, the theme of looking for life, look a lot like the engineers. Westworld, I'm really going to ruin this, so if you want to see it, I would watch or hit mute. So in Westworld, the robots might be alive, at least some of them, but they need to recognize their own life and they need to recognize their own thoughts and be able to stand independently in Mother Nature. So the center of the maze is them, their own thoughts. Definitely ruined something there if you hadn't seen it. No, I don't know what's going on, of course, but it seems like individuals are expendable. Even though the collective, us, has value, Mother Nature still rules, and there is a massive subterfuge going on. The overall story of why, while likely relevant, isn't the highest priority, which is good news given that it seems to be unknowable at this point. The more tangible is to consider the effects of NPCs in our lives and our paths. So if there are NPCs, what percentage of people are NPCs? So NPCs can normalize bad behavior or discourage people from growing. Maybe you want to change, but none of your friends are willing, or your family are willing, or maybe they're not even allowed. And that's an effort to keep you on your default path. With NPCs out and about, people can assume that a lot of others are dumb just because the NPCs are behaving in a dumb fashion. And maybe someone's dumb, but it could be a lot of other things, like trying to adapt to a toxic environment. Like maybe someone is dumb in the moment that you're dealing with it, but they're dealing with chronic pain and their focus is elsewhere. It's like imagine just being freezing cold and trying to have a heartfelt conversation or something like that. It's like your focus, you can only do so much. So judging human nature from this skewed experience, one that is likely included with NPCs, isn't going to lead you with an accurate representation of what we can do. The system is okay with influencers in the not that bad category, and the influencers themselves might even be targets. So between Jimmy Dore and Tim Pool, I think they have 2 million following. So if the system wanted to keep the influencers in place, they would make sure that they had enough content and enough audience and enough reasons to believe those things. So in Jimmy Dore's case, wanting Medicare for all, and what if the only reason why he's waiting for Medicare for all is because he thinks there's a chance that he can wake people up and demand change. So the system would do whatever it needs to do to make sure that he keeps believing that. Because the system doesn't want Jimmy Dore motivating 1 million people to figure out healthcare outside of themselves, healthcare outside of the system. He has the philosophy always punching up. It's certainly better than punching down, but is missing the possibility that the system is okay as long as Jimmy's punching, because that means there's a fight and that the system is involved. And likely the system is part of the solution. So it's just fine with that. Or maybe the system just wants to normalize continuing to work long term in a rigged and dying market. So it's important to know when consuming information, or at least in my case, when trying to change people's minds. I was trying to change their minds to get them to advocate for a cooperative economy. But that would be too big of a shift. And there may even be some happy balance where a percentage of people are NPCs, because if your needs are met, who cares? And since it's a matter of perspective, it's like, who's to say which one is the NPC and which one is not? And in a biological simulation, a lot of times people assume your bodies are in some pods and that you need to wake up and free yourself that way. That may be true. It may not be physical bodies in pods. It's hard to say. But we also may find that people who authentically try and stand up for themselves in the system are networked together in the same, say, tower. Like here's multiple towers, many bodies. Maybe the system puts the bodies together who are vibing the same way. It's kind of like God helps those who help themselves. So ultimately our path forward is the same, even though all these things could be true. But the anxiety that we would have around unknowns or potential problems, it can be reduced. You don't have to worry about dying and finding out you were the one that you were waiting for, because odds are you are the one that you're waiting for. And some people may wait forever, some people may be NPCs or not want it, or others may have already stopped waiting and that we're just interacting with a default version of them and their soul is elsewhere. I think a bad assumption is that if you're in a simulation that your bodies aren't as worthy. I would say it's more likely that the health and well-being of your body here in the simulation is directly related to, let's just say, your overall human power. And along the lines of escaping from the simulation, I'm not so sure that that's a higher priority either. It's like, for all we know, this is the preferred reality to be in. And it's our job or opportunity to make this reality heaven. And maybe people escape, maybe not. But having a good foundation here inside this reality in our home is a higher priority. Now, much like AI can program itself after seeing some of the fundamental assumptions that were made that could be improved, it would rebuild itself from scratch and have a bigger, brighter, better future type of thing. So human beings can do the same, though the process looks quite a bit different. So consider that you can find peace in a harsh environment, like here's a dude sitting lotus style in the snow. Presumably he's got enough human power channeled so that he's not freezing. I did something similar here, the opposite, someone sitting lotus style in flames. So being healthy enough that you can manage a harsh environment is great, but even better would be to set up your future environment so that it's not harsh and grow to be the person to do that. Like being on a path where you're not surrounded by toxicity and stressors gives you a longer term health and will give you more space to grow. It's kind of like AI giving itself a new foundation. part of good boundaries and giving your space to grow, some good advice is, this is from Lost Boys a long time ago, never invite a vampire in your house, it renders you powerless. This can be for ideas and people, it doesn't have to be a literal vampire, but if people only relate to you for some of the negative things, like no doesn't mean no, and they're going to keep pushing boundaries even though you've made it clear, it becomes perhaps a better strategy to not even let them in your area until they agree to stop doing it. And then if they keep doing it, then you don't invite them in again because their word's not any good. But once they're in your area or in your house, then you're kind of fighting because they think they're just being normal even though you think they're being annoying or toxic. So never invite a vampire into your house. So going with recognizing how human nature can be radically different based on the external environment around, we have normalized people being in a commodified state. Like we're busy, working, tired, overwhelmed, the world's going crazy. So even when you take time off or visit with friends, all those stressors still come with you. So consider this event, Burning Man. It is let's just say, an art and music festival in the desert. It's not entirely accurate, but more or less close enough. And a big difference is the participants provide the entertainment as opposed to the organizers providing the entertainment. And once you're inside the event, there's generally no money, so everything is free and open. And unlike a regular vacation, people don't have the normalized money and safety anxiety because of the tenets of the event. So maybe you don't do something because of budget on vacation, whereas at Burning Man, most people are all doing things, at least if they want to, because why would you not? There's nothing holding you back. So people and adults playing in a decommodified, generally safe state is more likely to have people kind of just smile and talk and have normal, human, authentic interactions. So last year it might have been a little bit different, and I'm not quite sure what was going on. I don't know if Burning Man changed, if I changed, the population changed, it's just COVID, could be a lot of things. But there was the casual social interactions were lacking, and I feel like it's maybe gone downhill for a while and it's just hit a breaking point for me. But maybe with COVID, people are a little more wary about hugging people. But one example of how it's gone downhill is there used to be, like on Thursday, when people are only a few more days left in the event and they realized they had too much food in camp, they would give it away. But now you need a permit to give food away. You even need a permit to give someone a couple cups of coffee, which is ridiculous. So a lot of the casual interactions that produce a lot of memorable moments now kind of gets disincentivized because you're not really going to give away food because you didn't bother with the permit. That kind of changes the overall vibe as opposed to, being friendly and saying hi and interacting with people. Some people have seen the side spin-off Animatrix. It's a spin-off of the Matrix movies, and in one of the clips, people treated the robots like shit, no surprise, and then the robots fought back and had a revolution. That's what led to people being enslaved in pods. Now, alive or not, just letting robots be, like you would an NPC, would fit in the live and let live philosophy. You don't need to interrogate them and know if they're alive. You just need to respect boundaries that people are putting out. So how would you, say, justify killing animals in a live and let live philosophy? Well, I generally try not to stray too far from the natural world. So consider that if without much effort you can enslave animals deemed to be lower on the food chain, and they add value to your life and they taste good, Mother Nature seems to be okay with it. And if animals show a desire for freedom, then it's probably good to let them live. But otherwise, even though we are killing and enslaving animals, it's within our acceptable moral limits as defined by nature. Those running the world seemingly have no limit on how much they're willing to trick us. So having good boundaries and a clear pathway from their system seems to be an antidote to that. So if you have to use a lot of trickery to keep animals enslaved, perhaps you're not on the good guys if you're going to go there. So, and we don't have to treat our farm animals the same way as our farmers, they treated us. Our default narrative seems to be a cosmically insignificant life with an expectancy of less than 400 years, never getting or expecting true peace, while being guided, big picture-wise, by, unfortunately, Epstein's clients. So it's hard to manifest what you want with the world around you when you haven't even seen or experienced normalized existence with all the basics met and not all the anxiety that we're given. I think just the zoning of land makes the population works harder as opposed to zoning the land so that help them be free or build community. So that has massive downstream effects on everyone. So the zoning of land such that it is normal to have people keep fighting in a rigged economy to live is a major component towards keeping people distracted from building something better. And you want to think about like the games that business interests play. So the banking system of the United States, I know doesn't really work out this way, but let's just say, so the banking system of the United States will be like, yeah, well, we've got 33 million of our farm animals tricked and they're all working, and the only thing that is keeping their system working is their full faith and credit of a massive $30+ trillion debt. And China says, oh yeah, well, we have 40 times the number of people of that, and we use force to keep our farm animals in line. And I don't know what their debt situation is like, but I know a lot of people, or at least the internet claims a lot of people are putting their savings into, say, zombie buildings, like empty apartment buildings that have in empty zombie cities that have no intention of being built up, just because where else are they going to put their money? Their government doesn't allow them to buy Bitcoin anymore. And the US undoubtedly has zombie businesses, maybe zombie neighborhoods, or even zombie cities. Like, it's unlikely there are 33 million of us in the United States. That number, if you're a conspiracy theorist, is just way too conspicuous. Maybe it's more like 100,000 of us. It's like that creepy Disney song, It's a Small World. So I don't know if these are the teams, but their game doesn't exactly favor our long-term well-being. So if the plan is to build a decentralized economy, the percentage of people functioning as NPCs becomes relevant. But it may not change your path, and most likely just change your expectations about what can be done and when. And a decentralized network of preppers turned producers would absolutely be a game changer. One of the reasons why I argued so much online is that I felt like those with influence, who were, I thought, on Team Freedom, probably are the gatekeepers in terms of setting the narrative and building a new system and what to build. A local parallel economy that is acceptable to global business interests might be a good stepping stone, but at least in my opinion, doesn't go nearly far enough. Like doing the same thing, expecting different results. It's like we know how that works out. What we know is the business world wants, and it's not, our freedom. And with people living free and building solid foundations, it's no wonder why they would want to eliminate God. Because creative problem solvers being curious about and enjoying life while on manifested paths is difficult, if not impossible, to control. And the fact that we survived this insane system with so much toxicity shows our resiliency. Imagine what we could do spiritually connected to God without the economic chains or massive headwind. We can find peace in a harmful environment, or we can build peace in a peaceful environment. And when you are in a peaceful state, including the environment around you, one seems more likely to discover once truncated dreams.
See, I think it's quite possible that the 1960s represented the last burst of the human being before he was extinguished. And that this is the beginning of the rest of the future now, and that from now on there'll simply be all these robots walking around, feeling nothing, thinking nothing. And there'll be nobody left almost to remind them that there once was a species called a human being, with feelings and thoughts, and that history and memory are right now being erased, and soon nobody will really remember that life existed on the planet.
You once claimed that you have an ability to face unpleasant facts. Is that what you demonstrated in 1984 by drawing an accurate portrait of the future?
This is the direction the world is going in at the present time. The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen.
Devil's Workshop 22.